Paul Homchick is the first Fozy on today. Greetings, he says, from rainy central Japan. He's been on holiday over there for a week or so. Gordon Smith, good evening from Denmark. Wonderful, you guys. Yep, nice to have you, Gordon, again. Ed Worley down in SoCal saying cheers. And I see David Price is on from Sydney, or from Australia anyway, New Orleans, Sydney. Alistair Murray, good night, Tom and Julie. I'm back after a couple weeks away on the bike, hoping to see you and both there. Thank you. Let's get this one off the dock.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to show number 568. Closing in on 570. Closing in on the end of the year. We got a lot of folks on here already, I'm sure, in anticipation of our two excellent guests today, Chris Otorowski and Tim Murphy, who are standing patiently by on the respective coasts of this country. Regan Edwards. Hi, Regan. Long time. Good afternoon from Florida. Mary Jude Szymanski in Philadelphia. Oh, my, I made it. Good afternoon from Philly. Graham Sweeney is on the North Sea. He finally got on the ferry. We'll talk about that in a sec. Sunny Sydney, Price, he says, David Price. And the esteemed Ralph Roberts, wet and windy in Takapuna on the North Shore in Auckland, New Zealand. Always nice to have Ralph with us as well. Welcome to all of you. Julia is not quite here yet, but progress. We'll tell you about that in a sec. We start with our pre-start. As usual, we are featuring a race committee. For the last three shows, we've been featuring this race committee in Helsinki at the Koivusaari Sailing Club. They run the Helsinki Tallinna race, I guess it is in Finnish, and they run that every August. It's a big race, and bravo Zulu to them. Julia, I was there yesterday with her again. We see her three times a week. She is making plans and preps to get out of the convalescent home. Her foot is repairing very well, as we told you on Friday's show. And as Blake Middleton says, sending more break out of jail vibes to Julia, indeed. So we get her out of there, we think, if not this weekend, Thanksgiving weekend here in the U.S., but hopefully early next week. She's got the clearance from the docs, provided she gets everything at home sorted out. So she's not here with me in Studio B, and we are missing her dearly, as you all know. We hope to have her back. She is cleared to return home. We hope to have her back very soon. Let's get on with this day in history. 22nd of November, 1963. The Americans will all know this, and probably Chris Otorowski will as well, and probably some of you who are abroad. This is your first and only clue. Sad day in this country. One of the saddest days, I guess, in my life. Steve Gruber's got it. JFK, indeed, Steve. The assassination. And this photo from Dallas, moments before he was assassinated. And why do we feature this? Well, obviously it was a big deal in the history of this country, if not the world. For many people, the assassination of JFK is a flashbulb memory, a memory they can instantly recall where they were when the news broke of his death. Kennedy Road in the motorcade, as I'm sure you all know, in Dallas, Texas, when Lee Harvey Oswald sniped him. I didn't know snipe was a word that could be used as a verb, but noun. But sniped him from the school book depository above the procession route. Many conspiracy theories have ensued that Oswald either did or didn't act alone, that government agencies and foreign nations were involved, Russia and Cuba, or that a second sniper existed on the infamous grassy knoll. Whatever the case, Kennedy was a young, charismatic politician who had high approval ratings, and his death was mourned as a tragedy by many people in this country and beyond. But there's another reason. I assert, and I have, as you've heard me on this show many times, asserted that one of the reasons I think the sport grew so quickly, at least in this country, if not beyond, in the 60s and 70s, was not just because of fiberglass and Dacron, which made low maintenance, fairly low cost boats, but because of JFK and Jackie. He was the sailing president And Blake Middleton saying, yeah, JFK was a sailor too. This is the pre-Sunfish. This is an AM, well, before it was AMF. This is an Alcourt sailfish. Ted Ryman saying, yeah, he was a sailor. And he had a Weano, I think that's a Weano Senior that he sailed on the Cape and sailed virtually all his life as a kid and growing up, and it was a big family time. I mean, what would not inspire you to go sailing if you were my parents or your parents otherwise, to see a charismatic president, before that a senator with his beautiful wife and those two kids there in their arms, other kids in the boat with them. I don't know who the guy is, the studly looking figure on the back. But JFK also raced a Star. That boat has been repurchased, and rehabbed, Star number 721. And I think that's either in the Kennedy Library or it's somewhere on display. And of course, this famous picture, he had a bigger boat, and I guess an S&S 62, I think it was, called Manitou. And then he famously gave the speech, and it's hard to imagine. We've had some sitting prime ministers and one or two other presidents have. Eisenhower famously went to the America's Cup in Newport in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s. But he said, this is boring. He says, like, I don't know if he said it, but it's attributed to him about this is like watching the grass grow. And Eisenhower went golfing, but not Kennedy. He gave the talk, JFK, the night before the opening race at the Breakers in Newport.
I know that all of us take the greatest pleasure in being here. First of all, because whether we're Australian or American, we are all joined by a common interest, a common devotion and love for the sea. And I am particularly glad to be here because this cup is being challenged by our friends from Australia. This extraordinary group of men and women, numbering some 10 million, who have demonstrated on many occasions, on many fields, in many countries, that they are the most extraordinary athletic group in the world today. And that this extraordinary demonstration of physical vigor and skill has come not by the dictates of the state, because the Australians are among the freest citizens in the world, but because of their choice. And therefore, Ambassador, you are most welcome here. And it is an interesting biological fact that all of us have in our veins the exact same percentage of salt in our blood that exists in the ocean. And therefore, we have salt in our blood, in our sweat, in our tears. We are tied to the ocean. And when we go back to the sea, whether it is to sail or to watch it, we are going back from whence we came. And therefore, it's quite natural that the United States and Australia, separated by an ocean, but particularly to those of us who regard the ocean as a friend, bound by an ocean, should be meeting today in Newport to begin this great sea competition. I want to toast tonight the crews, the sailors, those who made it possible for the Gretel to come here, those who have for 100 years defended this cup, from the New York Yacht Club to all of them. As the ambassador said so well, they race against each other, but they also race with each other against the wind and the sea. To the crew of the Gretel and the crew of the Weatherly.
What else can you say except what an exceptional speech? He had a couple of great speech writers, but a lot of that was in his heart and soul as a sailor. Stingray saying, yes, salt in our blood, in our tears, and just, that's a line that gets used a lot now in more modern day speeches. Fantastic stuff. Julie Aarons checking in from chilly Cleveland. And what else? Yeah, Blake Middleton, that's still a great and classic story. Yep, great line. And as Alistair Murray said, a wonderful and generous welcome from the president. I mean, a sitting president in Newport on the eve of the 62 America's Cup. Fantastic stuff. And of course, it was a year later on this day in 63 that he was assassinated. Christopher Gillingham and Jane checking in from Leamington, and others checking in. John Lamberts Van Buren, that line, the salt in our body, loved and love it to bits indeed. John, thank you very much for that. And the next day, he was out watching the racing in a series of famous photos. Ted Ryman saying, don't forget that the Fozy, the Friends of Sailing Illustrated, also had booze in their blood. John Emmett just checking in from, yeah, I guess you're home now, John, aren't you? And back in the south of England. So here it was JFK and Jackie out watching the race, and there were a lot of luminaries with him that day. Richard R., I don't know who Richard R. is, but welcome, Richard, from Chile, Newport, Rhode Island. Fritz Mueller. Yeah, Jackie was a smoker, and they tried to keep her smoking habit. You saw it in that video. That was one of the very few times you ever saw her smoking a cigarette. But sad day, this day in history, 22nd of November, 1963. Hard to believe that's almost 60 years ago. It's 59 years ago. Almost 60 years ago today. Okay, as promised, we've got a terrific lineup, but we want to get to John Emmett first. As usual, in the starting line, John is with us, and he is back from a year with the Coach's Corner, the Fitness Fozy, what do we call it? And John Emmett reporting from yesterday, the last day of the ILCA 6 and 7 Europeans in a year.
Good morning, Tom, Julia and all Fozy. Final day of the ILCA 6 and 7 Europeans here. Not a lot of wind, so I'm going to risk the walk through the boat park. Probably see in the background it's super busy, which is why I haven't attempted it before. As always, little element of danger, might fall in the water, but I definitely can't walk through the boat park. There's just, crikey, well the expression is there's not enough room to swing a cat. I always thought when I was young, poor cat, but I guess that's probably more cat of nine tails than naughty sailors. But neither of which are going to be swung around today. But everyone's rigging up, hoping to go, but you might be able to tell from the light in the background. Not sure we're going to start on time. So this is the beginning of the end. It's going to be a high scoring regatta. It's pretty difficult here this time of year, even though a lot of people complaining about it being cold. As it heats up in the afternoon, the wind has always tried to go to the left, and that has also meant that the wind has died and big pressure distances across the course. Walking along the main launch point here, trying to find my ribs if I walk past again. So the big danger, trying to avoid walking into any masts which are sticking out. So it may happen. Morning. I'll try and do a little vlog from the after party, because win, lose or draw, I think the social aspect is really important. But I might have to stop now because I have a sail in my way. I'm going to try and limbo under a mast. Okay, there we go. So it's relatively light winds today, so very easy to get into the ribs, but there's a huge number of ribs here trying to support solar, because actually otherwise we wouldn't get to the race course. It really is that simple. One of the nice things, although I said obviously it is very busy, is we have both the 6s and 7s here, as well as the men's fleet. So we have sailors from the whole class, and the men and women at the same time, which I think is how it should be. Although it will make for a manic pack up, and that's probably on a lot of people's minds at the moment. But in theory, we have 3 more races to go for the ILCA 6s, 2 more races to go for the ILCA 7s. This is my rib here, so time for me to start the day job. I'll try and show you what the end of the day looks like. So earlier we had the beginning. This is definitely the middle. And shortly it will be the end. Right, Tom, Julia and all the Fozy, this is the end of the night. I don't think you can hear anything, but I'm going to go and walk past a few sailors. And then I think we're really going to have to call that an evening. We say hello. Let's see who we found. I'm sorry, 2 more coaches. Chris.
You need to interview the ambassador.
Is this the Luca behind me? The coaches. This is Gary Barley, European champion. Okay, there we go. Right,
Okay, well, you get the idea. Some pretty clever comments. Gordon Smith saying, "I like the beer dispensers." Yeah, I haven't never seen that, John. I didn't get invited to that party. Well, it was in the air, but not that I would have flown over for it. Ryman saying, down in Cape Town, South Africa, obviously, he's saying, "I rest my case about sailors liking to have some alcohol in their blood." Well, we ran that video the other day that about who was it that was somebody talking. It was a Twitter employee who had gotten excused and talked about the parties at Twitter and said, "Yeah, we used to all drink like sailors." I didn't know sailors had such a reputation, except maybe Jody Shields. John Emmett, thank you for those. I'm going to run another Emmett video in the Bravo Zulu section down in the C block because this is a big event. This ILCA 6 and 7 Europeans, a lot of top sailors, not just from Europe, but from all over the world. And a couple of the photos, these are screen grabs that talk about, we call ourselves Sailing Illustrated News, Views, and Notables. Look at the notables in this picture, the Serbian coach, a couple other famous sailors, the class technical officer, and our Fozy on the right, dear friend, long time. He's been on the show any number of times. Luca Devoti, lives in Spain, from Italy, America's Cup, and Finn, silver medalist in 2000. A lot of cool guys at that party. John apparently couldn't get any of them to do an interview, including, you see this guy with a beard. Well, I guess they've all got a bit of beard. That is Pavlos Kontides, the Cypriot medalist in the laser class, who is doing very well in any number of other classes, including the Star Sailors League. So thanks for that report, John. We are, as I said at the end of the show, going to run his video released today, an interview with the champs, at least the ladies champs, at the ILCA 6 and 7 seniors, Europeans, and that again are John Emmett sailing. Go to the front of the fleet with Coach Emmett. What other comments do we have here? Blake Middleton, another good example of a drinking event with the sailing problem. Indeed. And yeah, I agree, Gordon Smith. I think John was cleaner shaved in Lee's lap. I don't know why he's so clean shaved. Lily's not there. That I think she's in China. His beautiful bride and Olympic gold medalist. Don Lunabos checking in. Greetings from Sonoma. Hello to you, Don. And fantastic share by John once again. Blake Middleton saying Mary Jude liked that speech. By the way, I've gotten a couple texts from John Lamberts Van Buren confirming that is that last photo of JFK on the wheel, and there's a binnacle in front of him. Big JFK grin. Reminds me of Malin Burnham down in San Diego. We used to call his big toothy smile the JFK grin. Wonderful man that Malin is. And that is an SNS 62, was it, John? I didn't look at your text. I just saw it come across my phone as a notification. Okay, this before we get to Chris and Tim, we have a Fozy focus. Remember we were telling about Graham Sweeney, stuck in northern Scotland trying to get across to Yell, get across to the islands. He finally is right now, I think, watching the show on a ferry, and he texted me this morning and said that he has been waiting for a ferry for the weather to calm down so they could go across on a ferry. After 6 days of waiting, a couple hours ago, he walked down the gangplank, got on the ferry, and is now going across to Yell on the island there where he lives. And the reason I put this at the top of the show is because we're going to talk to Chris Otorowski, who also lives on an island just off the beautiful city of Seattle on Bainbridge Island, and get his reaction to what would happen if he had to sit in Seattle for 5 days before he could go across to his home on Bainbridge Island. JFK, John Lamberts Van Buren, JFK for sure had great taste when it came to boats and maybe to women too. I don't know if I didn't see the rest of that text, John. We're delighted to have today in our feature, and here is on the 100th, the centenary of the Cruising Club of America, and standing by in respective coasts of this country, my longtime friend Chris Otorowski, past Commodore of the Seattle Yacht Club, and a new friend who I've gotten to know in the last few days, Tim Murphy, who lives on the East Coast, just north of Boston. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hello.
Thank you, Tom.
Tim, let me start with Otto and ask you, Chris, I'm going to flick ahead. Let's go to this book, and then I'm going to show a map of where Chris lives and a little video of where Tim lives, because we like to introduce everybody's locales. But one of the things that they did in recognition, and we're going to tell you about this again at the end of this block, but Tim edited Adventurous Use of the Sea in honor of the Cruising Club of America, the CCA's 100th. Formidable Stories of a Century of Sailing from the Cruising Club of America. And many of you will know Sheila McCurdy, who was an editor with Tim. Tim authored it, and Sheila edited this book. Fabulous book that it is. Congratulations, guys. If anybody wants to buy the book, can they get it on Amazon? Can they get it from the CCA? How do you get that?
Yes, indeed. Amazon's the best place to go for quick delivery.
And it benefits the CCA?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does, Tom.
Chris, you're the Commodore. How long are you Commodore of CCA? Is that a 1 or a 2-year term, or for life?
It's for life. It feels like sometimes. It's 2 years. And so I started out in March of this year, so I've got another year and a half or so to go.
Okay. Well, I've known you since forever. You are a member of New York, but before that, you were a member of Seattle. You passed Commodore and still are a member of Seattle Yacht Club, which I guess is where we met, wasn't it?
It is, when you were squiring around the America's Cup.
Yeah, we did a talk up there, and if I can just tell the story quickly, Chris was Commodore then, and there was we take the cup. I think Chris Dixon was our skipper. This is what year was this, Otto?
Oh gosh, I think in 2005 maybe.
Sometime in there. I think. Well, if we had the cup, it would have been after. Well, you're right. We didn't have the cup. We were up promoting the cup. I guess it was prior to the 07 Cup, and we did an auction for a ride on, I guess, at one of the pre-regattas on board our BMW Oracle Racing yacht. And you started bidding for it, and somebody in the back of the hall was bidding against you, and it got up to some amazing sum, like what, 30 grand?
Yes.
And it benefited the junior program at Seattle Yacht Club. And then you turned to me and said, well, and I was kind of emceeing the thing with you, and you said, well, can we double down? And because maybe we'll both take it at 30 grand. And I said, well, I looked at Chris Dixon. He said, Tom, and Chris was clearly not amused. And he said, Tom, this is your deal. Whatever you think. I said, Otto. I turned to Otto and said, Chris is known as Otto in the sailing world. I said, Otto, yep, you can do it. And how much did you raise that night?
A lot. It was great for the junior program.
No, it was good fun. And what a great leader you were of that club. And now, as you are of the CCA, this new book is out in your 100th year. And Chris, speaking of islands and taking the ferry across, I've been to your home on Bainbridge Island, and you can, I guess, take a seaplane over there, but normally it's a, half an hour, 30-minute, 40-minute ferry ride?
Yeah, it's a 35-minute ferry ride, but then you've got to, wait at either end. So it's kind of more like an hour under the best circumstances.
Now, I know you have an office out there on Bainbridge, but how many days a week do you normally commute into your office in Seattle?
About 1 day a week or less. Since COVID, it's all different. We've got a nice office over in Seattle that doesn't get a whole lot of use now. We're basically centered on Bainbridge. And
you, sir, are a lawyer, and you do legal, insurance, medical work, right?
I do. I represent plaintiffs in injury and malpractice cases.
And I think you once told me you only do like 2 or 3 cases a year, ones that you are quite sure are going to settle, 4 cases.
Those are the best ones. Those are the best ones to take, the ones you're going to win.
Well, I told you Otto was smart, and he is an esteemed member of the Seattle Yacht Club, one of the most beautiful clubs in this country, of course, up in Washington State, in the PNW, as we call it, the Pacific Northwest. And Otto is a past Commodore, and his bride, Sean, who's also a lawyer, is a past, what do you call it, Otto, the Admiralette, or what is?
She was the admiralette, yes,
And,
during the opening day week.
and what is I mean, that's a position I haven't heard other clubs have. What's the admiralette?
It's a serious working position for opening day. Our opening day process is about 4 days. It goes Wednesday through Saturday, and it falls on the first Saturday in May. And we have lots of activities. It's probably outside of Kiel or something. It's probably the most well attended opening day of yachting season. We have about 1,100 boats that line up, and there's about 10,000 people who are there to watch it.
Well, and it's more than just opening day at Seattle Yacht Club. It's kind of opening day of the boating season, right? And you go out the canal and into what lake is that? Is that Lake Washington? Or?
Lake Washington, right?
And people line the shore, and you've got University of Washington. UW has their rowing team out there. I spoke up there once or twice, and it's just a magnificent occasion.
Yeah, it starts out with crew races that go through the Montlake Cut, and then it goes to a boat parade.
Fantastic stuff. Let's go now to introduce a little bit more about Tim. Tim wrote the book, as you saw. He authored this book, but he's been since '91 writing for Cruising World. You can tell by his face, he's a little younger than Otto and myself. By the way, Otto, speaking of youth, you turned, shall I say the age?
Go ahead.
You say it.
69.
Otto turned 69 on Sunday, and I turned 69 on Thursday. So we were born 4 days apart. We've discovered that, and we've celebrated our birthdays on and off together over the years. And it's 69 is fine, right, Chris?
Yes, but wasn't there some discussion, Tom? We might have shared the same birth mother. I forget that.
I don't know about that. But meanwhile, Tim, tell us about your hometown, Gloucester.
Yes, so Gloucester, Massachusetts is about 30 miles from Boston. So a lot of people will be familiar with Boston. It's on the North Shore. And one of the things I love about it is that we're a single day sail away from here to Casco Bay in Maine. We keep our boat wintered up in Portland, Maine. And so in a single day sail, we can be to our mooring here in Gloucester. It's a lovely place to sail.
I have a video about your beautiful hometown. Many people call the oldest ship. What do you call it? Oldest
fishing port.
Fishing port, but just port in the country. Let's have a quick look.
1623.
What year?
1623.
1623.
If you say you're headed to the Cape for the weekend, you're not headed here. While the Bay State's larger Cape and Islands are world famous, Cape Ann has long been labeled the other Cape, but with its own long and colorful history, relative quiet, natural beauty, and fairly minimal development. That label ain't so bad.
30-plus miles north of Boston, Cape Ann also marks the northern edge of Massachusetts Bay, an island until only the 1950s when it was finally bridged with Route 128. It's home to 3 towns and 1 city, Gloucester, America's oldest seaport and, in many ways, still Cape Ann's hometown.
We are
Okay, this goes on now and talks about the fishing that goes on up there in your town. But Gloucester, anything else to say about Gloucester before we leave this vid from Channel 5, the ABC network station in Boston?
Well, it's got a long connection with the Cruising Club of America. Early on, the club was founded in 1922, and within the first few years, they would gather here in this harbor. So there's a long history. They would come to watch the schooner races between Nova Scotia and the Gloucester fishing fleet.
Beautiful stuff. Okay, let's go on now, Chris and Tim, and we've got some slides that you've both contributed to the occasion. Who wants to start? Because this was, I guess, in September, Chris, at your centennial party in Newport, Rhode Island at Fort Adams.
Exactly. It was in September, and we were celebrating our 100th. I was capping off the end of a week that had a lot of lectures, seminars, and it was quite the gathering.
Yeah, and how many people?
We had about 285 people at the main events. And just to give you an idea, we have 1,400 members in the club covering Canada, Bermuda, and the U.S. And we have 1,100 yachts in the club fleet spread all over over the place.
We're going to run a video by way of introduction to the CCA in a minute, but we wanted to show you some of these shots from your big party in September in Newport. Now, tell us about this beautiful woman on the left, whom I know well, and your Vice Commodore.
Well, that's my wonderful wife, Sean, there on the left, and Vice Commodore Jay Gowell, who did a nice job of dancing with my wife, which was great. And this was a presentation made by the Irish Cruising Club. This is carved out of a piece of 5,600-year-old wood. And we had Commodores, 3 different UK Commodores come out to join us for their festivities.
How old is the wood?
5,600 years, carbon dated.
Wow. And this gentleman?
It's John Luke Van Den Heed.
Did he write the book, Heavy Weather Sailing, or co-write it?
There were multiple authors of the book. Matter of fact, this was a gift copy. It was really nice.
Well, it's a fantastic, Royal Cork's 300 years old. We've got some clubs that are 100 years old, but the CCA has a special place in not only American sailing, in the culture of our sport, and obviously offshore sailing and cruising and racing for that matter, but also people from all over the world, as you'll see in a moment. Otto, as you're called by sailing friends around the world, what was this occasion, I guess that same week?
This was at the Sailing Museum. It was the night before our gala, and we had about 290 people, 300 max to be accommodated there. And so this was an opportunity for our club to get a good look at the Sailing Museum, which is really fabulous.
Are you on the board there?
I am. I've been on the board since 2009, I think it is.
What do you think of the job Heather Russom is doing?
Fantastic. It's very interactive. You need to spend a couple hours really to experience all the different exhibits there.
It's a great spot indeed. Okay, Chris, let's go to this Commodore, I should say, with deep respect. Let's go to this nice video. It's a long, 38-minute video that's on your website if people want to watch the entire video, but let's go have a look at an introduction to the CCA.
For passionate sailors, there is no greater joy than sailing the world's oceans, bays, lakes, and rivers with family and friends. The Cruising Club of America celebrates its centennial, recognizing the achievements of members who've enjoyed sailing the world. Sailing is a sport to be enjoyed for a lifetime. It connects the generations and brings the peoples of the world closer together. (1922) was a vibrant time in North America. People had recovered from the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. The Great War was a fading memory. President Warren G. Harding ushered in a new technology by giving a speech on the radio, and growing prosperity allowed for leisure time and the opportunity to be on the water. After completing a challenging transatlantic crossing in 1921, William Washburn Nutting was inspired by the Royal Cruising Club in Great Britain to form a similar organization in the United States.
The fact that he had a magazine to promote it in made it all the more sensational. While he was in England, he ran into the head of the Royal Cruising Club, Claude Worth. And this deepened his interest in drawing a lot of people together that were like-minded.
The mission of the proposed Cruising Club of America was to promote and facilitate cruising by amateurs, to encourage the development of suitable types of sail, motor, and auxiliary craft for cruising purposes, to stimulate an interest in seamanship, navigation, and the handling of small vessels, to gather and keep on file all information which may be of value to its members cruising in any waters. This basic mission continues to this day. Nutting was the Cruising Club of America's first Commodore, and 1 year later, Yachting Magazine editor Herbert Lawrence Stone was elected Commodore by 36 charter members. The club members are carefully selected for their accomplishments at sea. the mission and standards have been in place for 100 years.
The most important and only real asset of the cruising club is the standards for admission. And that leads to immediate trust.
Is definitely by design. And I think that's one of the key reasons that the club has held together for 100 years and will continue to hold together, because everybody has to meet a fairly stringent standard in terms of offshore sailing and being in command of a vessel.
Today, there are over 1,400 members who own over 1,000 boats. The wavy blue line and the white pennant symbolizes the waves on the ocean. The founders described it as a piece of bunting that anyone the world over would recognize.
The amazing thing about the CCA to me is that you can be at a cruise or an event where you don't know anybody. And then the folks you run across at the rum keg are invariably worth getting to know.
When you're out there sailing on the ocean, you form special bonds with the people that are with you on the boat, and then you share all these stories later. And that is the defining bond, is the connection with people that all stems from being on the water.
The people that I respected the most in the world were CCA members. And they were generally leaders in their community, as well as being really, really competent sailors. And the difference between going offshore with a competent sailor and an incompetent sailor is the difference between, frankly, life and death.
We've cruised with people we had never met before, who just came aboard in the Azores, for example, for our cruise there. And until proven otherwise, they're all good people, and that's really what it's about. And we have developed friendships, and then very close lifetime friendships as well.
Without a doubt, the biggest part of the cruising club is the friends that you make and the friends that you keep and the friends that you develop.
And that's really kind of what it boils down to.
The Cruising Club of America.
That's kind of what it boils down to, Otto. Nice video. Well done. Congratulations.
Gary Jobson did a beautiful job, and he's been, of course, a member for a long time.
Yeah, it said early 90s, I think, or mid 90s. Anyway, a lot of friends in that video, and it continues. If you want to go see that video, it's on the Cruising Yacht Club's. It is on the Cruising Club of America on their website, and this is just some more of it. It's what, Otto, about 38 minutes long?
38 minutes, and it's also on YouTube.
Is it on YouTube? On their YouTube channel, yeah. Great stuff. Okay,
I think
look.
it bears.
Go ahead.
I think it bears sort of emphasizing that before 1920, 1922, when the club was founded, we see these photos here of all those people gathered in the room representing hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of ocean miles sailed. And it just did not exist in the early 1920s. That was really the beginning of something, of gathering together a community of ocean-going sailors who would sail their own boats.
Tim, while we're watching this video, what was the most challenging thing about writing this book?
I think what was challenging and also fun about it was the mix of live journalism and archival research, and then in the middle years, the combination of the two, and then also I would add doing this all during COVID.
Mm. Well, there's you run into people. I know so many people here in San Francisco who are serious. I mean, there may be racing sailors, but people forget there's a lot of cruising sailors who maybe race a little bit, but do way more cruising. Julia, for example. By the way, Stingray, I took your advice, and during one of the videos, I went and grabbed the banjo. So we have the banjo in Julia's chair. Oh, dear. Tell us some more, Tim.
Yeah, so once we get on the photos, we'll start to see images from those early years. But I think what was interesting about the 1920s, there had been yacht clubs already by that point, starting in the United States after the Civil War, but they were mainly gatherings of inshore sailors. And, the number of people who had really crossed oceans and, sailed internationally over the ocean on small boats that they could manage themselves was a very small list. And there was this cohort in the early 1920s of several of them were World War I sub-chaser commanders who had gotten a taste of being out on the ocean and were not ready to go home and settle down yet. And that there were a gathering of other people.
Tim, excuse me. World War I sub commanders wanted to go cruising on yachts?
Yes, they did. They got a taste of being out on the ocean and liked the adventure of it. Wanted more.
Wow. Is that in the book? Is that part of the book?
It sure is.
Cool stuff. Well, let's go to the slides, and Otto, chime in here because this is a combo of slides, images that the two of you sent me. And who wants to start on this one?
Sure, I could start on this one. Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this boat is a Typhoon, and it's flying a trysail there. They had just sailed back from England, and in the Gulf Stream had blown out their mainsail. And this trysail was a gift of Thomas Ratsey over in England when they'd gone there. And
the famous sailmaker.
Yeah, famous sailmaker. And so this is coming back through the East River. I think they're coming through Hellgate here. And this is right around the time when the Cruising Club was founded. This guy is a great character. Casey Baldwin is his name. He was on the outbound leg with William Washburn Nutting. And he is the third person who ever flew an airplane after the Wright brothers.
What?
Yes, indeed. And he was the first British, citizen or subject who had ever flown. I think it was 1908 or 1909 when he flew an airplane.
Otto?
These guys have amazing stories.
They are. It's amazing how many people are, even today. I mean, you'll talk about Kayard and Spithill and any number of other people who are pilots as well as sailors. We have any number of Fozy as well. Okay, another slide here. Who wants to, is this still on Tim?
Sure. This was Typhoon. So on the top line you see is Typhoon's outbound track sailing to England, and then the lower line is their return home. They did it all in a single season. They left in late June of 1920, and then spent August of 1920 in England, and then returned home, and they were back in New York by November of the same year.
Interesting. Amazing.
This now is Malabar 4, John Alden design. This is the boat, one of the things when the Cruising Club was first founded in 1922, in the first year, a lot of their members reignited the Bermuda race, and Malabar 4 won that race.
Speaking of Bermuda and many other race wins.
Yeah, so this is Dorade. Olin Stevens was 20 or 21 years old when he designed this boat, and it changed everything. So when we look around at the fleet of boats out in the harbors today, they don't look like Alden schooners, largely because of this boat right here. It just ended up breaking all the ocean-going records that had ever existed, and all the handicapping rules had to be modified, and yacht design really followed from here.
And she's still racing today, Otto.
Yes, she is.
She is, and actually she's owned by Matt and Pam Brooks from San Francisco, and they've done an amazing job since buying Dorade about 12 years ago, and it's been all over the world, winning all kinds of races.
And contributors to the sport in a significant way. Matt Brooks is the chairman of, at least the last I knew, he was chairman of the New York Yacht Club Foundation, raising money.
That's right.
For yachting purposes there at New York. Chris, you're a longtime member. You have a nice home in Newport, Rhode Island, as well as in Bainbridge. Here's another slide of note.
Yeah, so this is X.C. Johnson and Irving Johnson on, I believe this is on the Brigantine Yankee. They had 3 Yankees, the first 2 of which they sailed 7 times around the world. And one of the things they did was bring paying guests aboard, and they're responsible for introducing, both from their own voyages, but then also for people who followed their lead. Tens of thousands of people were introduced to sailing on the ocean through the 2 of them. This is Brigantine Yankee, which was the ship they bought right after World War II and sailed from 1947 through 1958, 4 times around the world with about I think it was 14 or 16 young people paying crew that is sort of they basically pay their room and board.
Based in what is now your hometown?
Yes, indeed. They would launch and haul at the railway, the Marine Railway, about 4 miles from where I'm sitting, whenever they came home from these round-the-world voyages.
Amazing, amazing stuff.
Tom, I looked at the National Geographic that featured their voyages. I think it was 40 pages in like in 1947 or so. National Geographic was totally awesome.
40 pages in Nat Geo.
Yeah. Yes.
Well,
one great detail about Irving Johnson was they'd done 3 circumnavigations before World War II, and he joined the Navy before Pearl Harbor, and he was actually stationed in Honolulu, and then he made the charts. He made a lot of the charts for the U.S. Navy, and he'd go in before the Marines. So he was in Iwo Jima before the Marines got there to make charts for the Marines to be able to come in. Incredible stories this guy has.
Is this in the book?
CCA members.
Tim,
Yes,
is this is in your book? Cool stuff.
It sure is.
How about this?
This is a photo of a great boat called Carina that was built. It was designed by Jim McCurdy, launched in 1969, won the Bermuda race the first year, 1970, the first year that it sailed. And then when it was sold to Reeve Potts, won the Bermuda race again in 2010. He then put his 2 sons and a nephew aboard to sail to Sydney, Australia for the Sydney Hobart race. Well, sorry, first they went transatlantic, sailed in the Fastnet, which is the photo you saw just there. Then the boys sailed the boat to Sydney and then back, and they won in 2012 the Bermuda race again. So this is a boat that can race and can cruise, and here's the boys crossing the equator.
Reeves Potts, of course, the esteemed former past Commodore of New York Yacht Club, Chris, now 2 or 3 times removed, and was with us on the America II campaign back in the day in the 80s, in the 87 America's Cup in Fremantle, right, Otto?
A very, very fine gentleman. Yes, very accomplished.
Indeed. Okay, another cool photo, and this is an old photo of what is still a classic design.
This boat is a Cal 40. This is Illusion, owned by Stan and Sally Honey, and it's a great story. Again, one of the conflicts. I in the subtitle of the book, we say formidable stories from the 100 years, and the stories are true stories, and that their values in tension over the 100 years, cruising and racing being one of them. And so here's a boat that was just emphatically a good racer, especially with these owners, with the Honeys sailing the boat. This is the end of a Transpac race. And then they also cruised this boat for many years, from 2014 almost up to the present. They just sailed and won the Bermuda race this year, and they were cruising it all in between. So it's a great boat that can do, sort of the Jekyll and Hyde side. There you go. There's the other side of this boat.
And it was a Bill Lapworth design, and he was a member of the CCA.
Still an amazing class, still one of the coolest classes. In fact, I just saw a reference somewhere, an article somewhere about it being, even today, one of the coolest classes. And of course, Stan and Sally have just sold the boat to a son or nephew of Beau Froelich, who's our Vice Commodore here at St. Francis Yacht Club. And Stan and Sally have, after all these years, have said they're going to go cruising in a stink pot, Otto, in a powerboat.
Well, it's still Archimedes' principle, right? Afloat.
That's true.
That's right.
Okay, well, Stan is one of the celebrated, or perhaps most celebrated people in our sport today, the great navigator and everything he touches, including the America's Cup television. He designed for Larry Ellison for us here in 2013. They've used it on, and now in Sail GP, the whole line. What's the word I want? The what is the term of art they call that? Or the live line, I think is what it's
Ley
called.
lines.
Yeah, live line, but it's the Yacht Club ladder. Yeah, sorry, it's the ladder system, which was a brilliant idea of Stan's to show us like yard lines up the course, and a very smart idea, Otto. I think just amazing guy that Stan
Which, by the
is.
way, he also developed the first down lines in football for television.
Yeah, he did. He did the K zone in baseball. I don't know if you
Indeed.
also know, Tim, he also designed the flaming puck. I'm a hockey player from, still am, way back. That defines a lot about me, right, Otto?
Yeah.
Way back.
Show me your teeth.
But yeah, a couple of those teeth are not mine. But he designed the flaming puck, which the NHL fans did not like. That was one of the few things that he did that was not so popular. Gents, what about this beautiful shot?
One of the early mottos of the CCA was "Nowhere is too far." So this is a photo of Belvedere, and one of the CCA members, John Boxtos, was the first. He was the first yacht to cross through the Northwest Passage from west to east. But he did it over about 20 years, first in an umiak, a native walrus-skinned vessel, and then in this, in Belvedere, this 60-foot motor sailor. And this, I think, is his grandson on an ice floe. They did it over multiple seasons, but he was the first one to come all the way through from the Alaska side out to the Greenland side. 1988, he finished that. And then Nowhere is Too Far. Here we have the Kuhner family crossing the equator. So that's Scott Kuhner, the father, and Alex and Spencer, the two sons, crossing the equator for the first time.
What an education. Get out of the classroom. Go yachting,
Indeed.
Go sailing, go cruising.
One of the interesting sort of, dichotomies or missions of the CCA was pleasure and service. And this is Harriet Linsky, who she and Tom Linsky sailed across the Pacific in 1987-88 on a Bristol Channel cutter that they had built themselves. And then again went cruising in the 2000 sort of aughts and teens, and had wanted to do some kind of service. So here's a photo from, I think this is St. Lucia. They developed a wonderful program called Hands Across the Sea of delivering really good children's books to Caribbean schools and libraries.
Tom Linsky, famously good sailor, longtime friend, and competitor. We raced against each other any number of times. We're getting lots of comments. We will come to your comments in a sec. I didn't want to interrupt the flow here, as the guys are really in a nice stream of consciousness on these beautiful slides. How about this one?
That's Skip Novak's boat. Skip is a member, and he's also been awarded the Blue Water Medal several years ago. But he is quite the adventurer. I think he's very, very famous. People know who he is.
Otto, what's the Blue Water Medal?
Blue Water Medal actually was conceived in the first year of the club's existence, and it was for meritorious voyages. And it's been given out pretty much every year. There was a break a little bit during World War II. One of the interesting recipients was the Little Ships of Dunkirk. For those of you who've seen the movie Dunkirk and saw all the small boats that came to the rescue to rescue the soldiers, the CCA awarded the Little Ships of Dunkirk, which, by the way, is an organization that still exists, and awarded them the Blue Water Medal.
Cool stuff. Chris, how about this photo you sent me?
This was from a cruise. CCA does cruises all over the world, and this particular one we did this summer in Newfoundland. So this is one of the small villages there. And Newfoundland is quite an amazing place. Really hadn't been there before, but this was taken obviously with a drone, modern technology.
Boy, drone has just done an amazing job for our sport. Drones in general. I mean, you've seen them flying them off the round the world boats, what is now the round the world race, and it's just creating pictures like this. We've got Fozy up in that corner of the world, probably enjoying your slides. And speaking of news and notables,
Rich Wilson, a member, and he did 2 Vendée Globes. Very, very accomplished. And he has a nonprofit called Sites Alive. So broadcasting to students all over the world.
And an active member in the CCA. Tell us about this gang.
Very active. So this was from the Centennial. We did this in the Jane Pickens Theater. And so this was our heavy weather seminar. Randall Reeves on the left, then Rich Wilson, and then Jean-Luc Van den Heed and Steve Brown, and Frank Boland was the moderator. It was very well received. I think we had about 200 people there. And we have it on video, and it'll be on YouTube in the future.
Oh, you're going to put the whole seminar up on the YouTube channel for the CCA?
Yes. Yes.
Well, that was Jane Pickens Theater, by the way, for those of you not familiar with Newport, Rhode Island, is this historic theater which is used for public events, and they still air a few films there, don't they, Otto?
Yes,
Tim,
they do. It's a very active theater. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what else? Speaking of notables,
Sir Robin Knox Johnston. The funny little story that goes with this. I was down there. We were doing administrative type things for the Bermuda race. I got down there right after the start, and having lunch there at the Royal Bermuda Yacht Club, and there was Sir Robin Knox Johnston, and we struck up a conversation. And I asked him if he would be willing to come talk to us at our centennial. And he looked at his calendar and he sandwiched it in. He said, "Of course I will." And he did. Very nice man and very accomplished. So he delivered our keynote speech on Monday, the Monday night dinner.
This is in September in Newport.
In September, yes.
For your 100th. This is, speaking of the Jane Pickens Theater.
Yeah, this is a shot. This actually was from the Bermuda race this year, just showing what we do. Safety at sea and is a very important component of the CCA. In addition to sponsoring the Bermuda race with the Royal Bermuda Yacht Club, the CCA is very active in giving safety at sea presentations, and this is part of it for the Bermuda race.
Well, this is obviously on COVID. Medical decision support around symptoms and clinical management. You brought somebody down from Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center at Harvard Medical School. And it looks like, what was it, a requirement? Was it voluntary or requirement for, you got a lot of sailors in that. That's a big theater, by the way. I've spoken there with Brad Reed and a number of others, any number of times.
Well, it's put as part of the weather briefing, so everybody needs to go. Two people from each boat are allowed to go.
Speaking of safety at sea.
Yes, this is Dr. Bill Strasberg from Maine. He's chair of our Safety and Seamanship Committee. And as part of our centennial, we did some practice recoveries of men overboard at the dock.
That's a body made out of fenders, it looks like.
Yes, it is. It's the best we could do.
Cool stuff.
Oscar, they call him.
What do they call him?
Oscar.
Oh, that's what do you think of this this group for the Chesapeake? In fact, he's been on the show, and he may come on again soon. What do you think of the group that's promoting the rescue swimmer approach? For for PO, do we call it person overboard now, not man overboard? Let's be politically correct, Otto.
I don't know. I still refer to man overboard, but you've got to have some special training to be a rescue swimmer.
Indeed.
And that's really kind of a last resort. But there's a big focus that is happening now in terms of how do you recover somebody who's in the water once you've got them. And it's not that easy.
Exactly. Okay, well, we'll continue, and maybe you come back on, or one of your CCA experts, and we'll keep, because I think it's a very important topic, isn't it? Recovery. I mean, not just figuring out where they are and finding them, but then getting them back aboard is a much bigger deal than people realize.
It is. It is, because usually the person in the water is losing strength, becoming hypothermic. They don't have the strength to pull themselves up on anything. And fortunately, the life sling is a very helpful piece of gear to effect recovery, but you have to practice it and know how to do it.
Bermuda race.
This was not taken this year, but the CCA has been co-sponsoring the Bermuda race since about 2024. And so co-sponsors with the Royal Bermuda Yacht Club. This year, I think we had 180 boats in the race and many different classes. And it was a pretty good race for for most sailors, and especially the honeys. They did a beautiful job.
Well, they won, right, on their Cal 40.
Yes, they did.
They had a shall we say, a pretty remarkable team with them too.
Yes,
including
they did.
some Seattleites, if I remember well.
That's right, fast Seattleites.
Some Seattleites. That, for those of you who don't know, a Seattleite is not some kind of a Sputnik. It's not some kind of a something orbiting the Earth. That's what we call people like Otto from Seattle, right, Chris?
That's right.
You did something pretty unique, and sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, I just said sometimes we think we're the center of the known universe out there.
I thought that was people in Boston, Tim. I thought the Bostonites,
the
hub of the universe.
Indeed.
Well, regardless, we think of our beautiful sport as the coolest sport on the planet and maybe in the universe. You did something interesting this year, Chris. Was this your innovation?
Not my innovation, and it started really with the Royal Bermuda Yacht Club and the New York Yacht Club. And so the three of us co-sponsored the shorthanded return. I think there were about 20 boats that competed. And so typically either some solo, but couples, two people. And actually, Sally Honey, I think, won that also.
Oh, did she?
Back.
I remember I raced against Sally on Fireball Day. She's arguably a better sailor than her husband. I mean, she's a fabulous sailor. And of course,
2-time Rolex Yachtswoman of the Year.
Indeed. Well done. What's your view, guys? I'm going to go back to the, I think I am, here to the mixed view. By the way, we're about an hour and 2 minutes into the show. If you're just joining us, from Bainbridge Island, Washington, in our what we call the PNW Pacific Northwest, is Commodore Chris Otorowski, past Commodore of Seattle Yacht Club and Commodore now of the Cruising Club of America in their 100th year, and then author Tim Murphy from Gloucester, Mass, on the other coast, just north of Boston, south of Maine. And they're our guests today, talking about the CCA's 100th and a number of interesting topics. Appreciate it, gents, very much. What do you think of single-handed racing? What is your personal view, guys, and what is the official view of the CCA?
There isn't an official view of the CCA. It's just one way to sail a boat. We actually have quite a few members that single-hand. Matter of fact, David Tunick, who's actually the rear commodore of the New York station this summer, sailed his, I think it's 48-foot boat from Europe over to New York, single-handed. I mean, it takes a special person to do that. Also, Jim Quancy, out in your neck of the woods there, Tom, there are a number of single-handed sailors in the Bay Area.
Otto, you know our mutual friend. I guess you've known him since probably before the Stag Cruise, but Dr. Andrew McIrvin, who is the Secretary General of the IMA and a former admiral of the Royal Ocean Racing Club, a frequent guest on this show. The RORC still does not support single-handed racing.
Well, there are sailors out there that like to do it and want to do it, and they obviously have to be very prepared to undertake those things. They're always experienced sailors, so it's just another way to go sailing. Indeed, and we're going to give a full report here in a minute on the Route de Rhum, which is obviously single-handed sailing. But how about your trophies? Can people visiting Newport, Rhode Island, go in and see this fabulous trophy collection? Where at Iris? This is just a few of the trophies. We have a large trophy case that's, I think it's on the 4th floor of the Iris building there on Thames in Newport. And it's just open. You can go up. It's where the library is also. And you can get a good look at these pretty cool trophies. And Iris used to be, they call it something else now, the International Yacht Restoration School, but it's much more than that. It's really an educational and terrific organization on Lower Thames Street, just a little bit beyond where the Sailing Museum is in Newport. And if you go in there, you can go to the library as just somebody walking in off the street. You need an introduction. Go up and see your trophies. No, the trophies are actually in the lobby area just outside of the library. Cool. It's just always open. Okay, guys, back to the book. We have
this as we wrap this segment up, tell us about the book one more time, Tim, and how, if somebody wants to get a hold of a copy.
Yeah, so basically it's structured as 18 discrete stories, so you could pick it up and just read any one chapter, and you get a whole story. You don't have to read the whole thing from front to end, but if you do, there's a really lovely through line that really answers the question of why does our fleet of boats look the way it looks now, and over the course of it, you get this profusion of different ways that people go sailing. There's people who do it with their single-handers. There are people who do it like the Johnsons did with a couple dozen people aboard. There's all kinds of different ways to do it, and so over these 18 stories, you get a really nice slice of the last 100 years, starting from really zero. There just weren't people doing this sort of thing at the beginning of it. And you can see from the photos at the beginning of this presentation that you did, showing all the people in that room there, just how successful this club has been at creating a community and disseminating it.
Indeed. And Tim, if somebody wants to get a hold of a copy of the book, you say on the Cruising Club, the CCA's website, and also on Amazon?
Amazon's the fastest way to get it.
Okay, so before Christmas, somebody could get a copy and stick it under the tree. Maybe we have a copy here. In fact, guys, I was looking around for it this morning so I could hold it up, because Otto, you gave me one when you were here for the Stag Cruise. And I think Julia may have taken it with her to the convalescent home to read it, because I looked around here in my apartment, then I went up into her apartment this morning to see if it was up there. So she may have it with her at the convalescent. It's a fabulous book. Thank you very much for that gift. And thank you to both of you for joining. Just before I let you go, and you're welcome to stay, by the way, through the rest of the show, but we've got a ton of questions and comments here. Richard R. Hi, Chris, from Alan and Richard Rankin. Alan Rankin salutes in his fond memories, Bruce Kirby, designer of the laser. Steve Groover's made some comments. I'm just reading through these many, many comments here. Nice artwork on the cover, Ted Ryman in Cape Town is saying. Stingray remembers a talk that I gave I think, Otto, I gave a talk at Seattle Yacht Club separate from opening day, I think once or twice.
Yes.
And Stingray, who is, by the way, is a retired Boeing engineer who goes by he doesn't use his real name, not sure why, because he's a completely reputable guy. I know him and I know his name, but he's asked me to keep him. He's just very shy, I think. Does Chris know the Buchan family, which obviously you do?
Yes.
Terrific sailors. Reagan Edwards, woohoo, my club. Talking about what? Opening day in Seattle is amazing about her club at Seattle Yacht Club. Graham Sweeney's back on that ferry. It takes 12 hours to get across. They still have 50 miles to drive after he gets across to Yell in Scotland. Blake Middleton, both young pups, Otto and Thomas. Well, Blake, you're much younger than we, but Chris and I feel young, and we try to stay young, don't we, Otto?
Absolutely. Sail every day if you can.
That's a great age, Chris. We'll celebrate soon, Richard R. is saying. Mary Jude Szymanski, we love Gloucester. Mary Jude is in Philly. Must spend some time up your way, Tim. What else here on the comment side? There's some other comments. Gloucester. I love Cape Ann. Steve Gruber is saying, lived for a while in Ipswich, northwest of Gloucester. I remember buying fresh crabs right off the boats in that area. Delicious, Stingray is saying. I guess talking about Gloucester. And Stingray grew up in South Africa, by the way, made his way to Seattle. Julie Ahrens, who's a Fozy, and she's on here almost every show. Good friend of Grant, the ETNZ gang. Grant Dalton, she said, I graduated from high school in 1969. The cheer is 1969. 69 is mighty fine. We don't mess around. Hey, Chris, there's our cheer. Now that we're both, or at least you are, and I'm about to be 69. Ryman Ted saying, I just realized I will be 69 in Feb of 2023. Where did the time go? Yeah, that is true. Stingray saying, okay, well, by February, you'll forget by then. Clark Chapin in Michigan, past commodore of our club, outside Ann Arbor is saying, yeah, bravo Zulu to Heather Rusum. Absolutely doing a terrific job, isn't she, Chris?
Yes, she is. Absolutely.
Gary Jobson's voice on sailing is almost as recognizable now as Warren Miller is to skiing, Blake Middleton says. Good point. Great comment by Stan Honey, too, Blake, saying, yeah, lots and lots of comments. I'm not going to read through all of it. There's so many. Great pics of Otorowski on his swan on Aphrodite. Where's your boat, Chris?
It's in St. Martin right now. It arrived a few days ago.
How many boats do you have these days?
Well, I'm a total idiot. We have 3 swans, a 39, a 46, and a 68.
Well, that's as one should. Well, you're an affluent lawyer, and you've got to keep up appearances at the CCA, don't you?
Well, it just we like to have boats in different places so we can go use them.
You sound like Larry Ellison. Next, you're going to have a private plane. I keep asking you, when are you going to get a private plane for all the commuting you do between Seattle and... You fly into Providence or Boston when you go? You must have been nonstop to Boston.
Alaska nonstop, Seattle to Boston, usually.
Mayor Quarter of a Century Clark is saying, been a member of the CCA since 97. Pedro Foiling Sailors just joining us. It's early in the morning down in Sydney, 0911 down there. I'm sorry I'm late. Walk, swim, coffee at Balmoral Beach. Now how good it is to be alive. He's about our age. Chris. Subchaser commanders, not submarine commanders. Clark Chapin is saying so it wasn't, apparently, if you believe Clark Chapin is an engineer, retired engineer at GM and very, very smart guy. He's saying that there's an article on Wikipedia, Tim, that they were the subchaser commanders.
Subchasers, that's correct.
Is that right?
Subchasers. They're 110-foot vessels.
Yeah, cool. Okay, there's some comments about that banjo over there in Julia's chair. She will appreciate, Stingery. That was a good idea. John Lamberts van Buren in the Netherlands is saying, such a superb little yawl raced her. I think he's talking about, I guess he's talking about Dorade. Raced her at Portacherra with Owen Stevens and Doug Peterson. That boat never stopped making the best memories for all aboard. Yeah, Dorade that was. I see in a later comment. Gordon Smith saying and he's in Denmark, this is really interesting to listen to. Yes, indeed. And thank you guys again. Steve Gruber, Carina was based in my hometown when I was a teen. Classic. And on and on and on. Illusion is now owned by Stan and Sally's nephew. Yes, that is true. As I think I mentioned, Bo Froelich, who's our esteemed vice commodore at St. Francis, no doubt will get elected to be commodore next year. Has become quite a good friend. Terrific guy. Liveline, thank you. Over these comments, man, there's so many comments. Shirley Robertson, by the way, John Lamberts van Buren, thank you for that comment. I just saw on Facebook before we went to air, when I was in hair and makeup, I had my phone out there in case somebody sends and indeed somebody did. One of you, thank you, said that Shirley Robertson has, she's in hospital. She did not make it to, where was it, Malta for the yachting forum, the yacht racing forum, because she's had her appendix out. She's fine. She said, everybody, thank you for the good wishes, but she's in hospital recovering from an appendectomy. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Oh, so many comments. I'm not going to read all these comments. We'd be here the rest of the afternoon, and we still want to get to the C block. But great show, Tom. Thank you, Team Out of Mind. Yeah, really nice to have these guys on. There's my mother, my beloved mother, Janice Davis, is saying that my sister's yacht is a Swan. Yes, she has a Swan 48 in Greece. You need to put a scarf next to the banjo. I didn't have time, Julie Aarons, to run up and get a scarf because I don't know, guys, if you know, but Julia always wears, or almost always wears, a scarf when she comes down here and sits with me as my co-host in the studio. We miss her very much indeed. And Otto, I've got your burgee. It was hanging there where the Beach Street Yacht Club burgee is. It's now over here on the far wall here in the studio. This Cruising Club of America burgee based on, well, that logo.
There it is.
I have your Centennial burgee, which you brought to us at the Stag Cruise. And gents, I want to thank you very much. Any last thoughts, Tim? Let's start with Tim.
Thank you very much. It was great to have a chance to talk a little bit about this history.
Well, it was indeed, and congratulations on the book. What's your next project, or what's your current project? You told us in the tech check there was something kind of cool going on.
Yeah, there were several. There was one I was very happy about. One of the chapters that ended up on the cutting room floor because I couldn't get into the archive during COVID was the story of Samuel Eliot Morison, who sailed in 1939 in small boats across the Atlantic and then back again to follow the path of Columbus. So that's in this month's Boat US magazine, November-December issue.
Boat US, not Cruising World, Boat US?
That one's in Boat US magazine. Yep.
Will you send that to me, please, and I'll put it on my personal Facebook page, a link to it, and when it's available, and I'll put it on the Sailing Illustrated Facebook
yes,
page
indeed.
as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Otto, last thoughts?
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for inviting us, Tom. It's a privilege and an honor to be Commodore of the Cruising Club. There's many great people that have gone before and been members of the club, and it's just inspiring. And I want to give a big shout out to Tim for doing such a beautiful job on that book. It really is beautiful. And Sheila worked on it as an editor. And Sheila also is writing a book on the history of the CCA, which will come out sometime in 2023.
Sheila McCurdy.
Sheila McCurdy.
Talk about great sailors.
Everybody knows Sheila, right?
And cool people.
So anyway, it's really a thrill to be involved with all these sailors and be involved with this club. And thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, and you're welcome to stay. Here's a live shot from the Hyatt Regency in Boston Harbor out your way. Tim, it's getting dusk there. It's past dusk now in Boston.
Yes, indeed. It's dark outside my window.
So enjoy the rest of your afternoon and your Thanksgiving week. Thanks, gentlemen. Much appreciated. And as I say, if you want to stand by, I'll see you up here in the monitor if you're here. If you got to go, have a great Thanksgiving. Happy belated birthday, Chris, Commodore. And we'll see you both again soon.
And happy birthday to you, Tom.
Thank you, Otto. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Tim.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Ciao for now.
Happy birthday. Cheers.
Right.
Representing the Cruising Club of America, the Commodore this year and next, Chris Otorowski, longtime friend from up in Seattle, past Commodore of the Seattle Yacht Club, and the book written by his author, Tim Murphy, who has written the Centennial book. And as I say, I have a copy of it here, and we're deeply appreciative of them for coming on. John Lamberts Van Buren saying, fantastic guests, Tom, would be magic to have them come back regularly. That's a great idea. Regan Edwards, I just love Otto, the nicest gentleman sailor I've ever met. Great interview. He is a terrific guy. Tim is good to meet Tim as well, who sounds very interesting. I hope to spend some more time with Tim. Clark Chapin saying Samuel Eliot Morison later wrote the 15-volume here's a tidbit. Samuel Eliot Morison later wrote the 15-volume history of the U.S. Navy operations in World War II. 15 volumes. I have a copy, and they are some of my favorite books. Gordon Smith, fascinating to hear the history and current news of the CCA. One learns something new every day. Bravo Zulu to everyone involved in the CCA. Thanks to the many of you who joined for today's show, or maybe you're watching in replay, as many of you do. This is Tuesday afternoon, November 22nd. We're live as usual from San Francisco. We go live Tuesdays and Fridays at 1300 Pacific. But not this Friday, because I'm taking the day off. I don't want to work on Thursday, which is our Thanksgiving holiday. We have a big 4-day weekend. It takes me a good bit of the day before we go live to put the show together, the slides and so on, the videos. So I'm going to take this Thursday off, which also happens to be, as you heard from Otto, my birthday. But welcome if you're just joining us to show number 568. We want to get into the Route de Rhum, and now the IMOCAs have finished, at least the top boats. Thomas Riant, solo skipper, have linked out. We told you taking the lead, and he was unofficially crowned king of the Transats when he won the 38-boat IMOCA class on the 12th Route de Rhum a couple days ago. Bravo Zulu to him. It was a big reception by all concerned there in Guadeloupe. Hollow-eyed, this is their official press release from the RDR. Hollow-eyed and wobbly-legged with extreme tiredness this morning after setting an infernal, unbeatable pace, especially over the last 3 days and nights of the 3,542 nautical mile course from Sao Malo to Point Apitre, Ponta Pitre Rouillant received universal acclaim from his rivals who finished in his wake. He set a new course record of 11 days, 17 hours, 36 minutes and change. Fully 11 hours and change quicker than the mark set by Francois Gabard in 2014. He adds what he today called, quote, the biggest win of my career, unquote, to a fistful of transatlantic successes, now adding to last year's two-handed Transat Jacques Vabre, which he won a year ago with Morgan, I won't try to pronounce Lagraviere, on a similar course racing from Le Havre to Martinique, and his solo Route de Rome win in Class 40 in 2010. But the 41-year-old skipper from Dunkirk, who is a very rare Nordist in solo racing world, in which most top sailors are Breton, also won the Mini Transat in 2009 and 2 Figaro Transatlantics. Amazing, amazing guy. And here is the runner-up who was leading most of the first half of the race, Charlie Delan on Pevia, ended up second. And in third, we've been telling you, running third most of the race was Jeremy Bayou, the famous, also single-handed sailor from France, sailing aboard his Charal. Now, here's a nice video of the finishes of the podium, these three guys in the last couple days, just kind of summing up the IMOCA finishes and all the emotion and ambiance in Guadeloupe. Have a look.
Sûr que si le niveau d'engagement qu'il y a eu sur cette course, il a été donné avant tout par Charlie en début de course. Ouais. Et ouais, si la victoire est belle, c'est parce que aussi ça a été difficile d'aller la chercher. Et Charlie a été vraiment un très très gros client sur cette course. Moi je suis cramé, je pense que Charlie est bien cramé. Merci.
Quand même assez rapide parce que j'ai pas eu le temps d'évacuer le rhume avec lequel je suis parti. Mais ouais, c'est intense. Le Tour du Rhum, c'est quand même un sprint. C'est vraiment un sprint de 11 jours. On s'arrête pas, on a le temps de rien faire. Contrairement à Vendée Globe où j'ai le temps d'envoyer des vidéos, des photos, de raser, faire des trucs comme ça. Là, j'ai vraiment eu le temps de rien faire, à part m'occuper du bateau. On était vraiment esclave du bateau pendant toute la course, quoi.
Podium encore une fois tous les trois, voilà, ils sont devant, ils étaient meilleurs, donc voilà, un gros bravo à eux, ils ont fait une super course, c'est surtout Thomas à la fin qui a vraiment tout déchiré, donc voilà, c'est comme ça, la prochaine on essaiera d'être devant. Bravo, merci.
What a great sport we have. Amazing extreme athletes these guys and gals are. Bravo Zulu to them all. This is the about an hour, I think, before we went to air. As you can see, linked out Thomas Rouillant, and all the way down to this 9, and I think beyond. We'll show you the next list in a moment. Have all finished, but look at in 7th place, the top female, Justine Metro, has finished. In this, you see there in her 7th place, right over here. And arrived today, early this morning. Bravo Zulu to her. We'll give you a little bit about her, sailing her teamwork.net, IMOCA. She was 7th. Bloody hell. Justine Metro, teamwork.net, Swiss skipper. Justine Metro finishes 7th in the IMOCA, not only the top female, but the first international, meaning non-French, on the Route de Rome destination, Guadeloupe. Bravo Zulu to her. Fantastic job. Swiss skipper Justine Metro took 7th, as we said, in the IMOCA class when she crossed the finish line on the 12th edition of this race at 0241 UTC this morning, the 22nd, that's today, racing on her first ever Route de Rhum. Metro 35 is the first non-French skipper to finish in the IMOCA class and the first woman. Bravo, bravo, Zulu to her. Now, you look here on this chart, a little hard to see, but remember we've been following Pip Hare, and Pip is over here in 11th place. She had not finished when I did this screen grab before we went to air, but I think she has, because she was only, 24 and almost 25 nautical miles out at 1900 CET. So it's now in CET. It is, what time is it in Barcelona? 23:26. So I assume she's now finished. And bravo Zulu to her, because sailing Medallia, remember, she had that big hole in her main. We watched the video the other day of her trying to repair and keep the main from continuing to blow up on the stress lines. Pip Hare on Medallia. Here's a little video from her as she was approaching the finish earlier today.
We are coming up to Tete Anglaise, a little island there. I was expecting the wind to kind of bend around inside this bay here and lift me up to the island, and it hasn't. So my lie line wasn't that good, and jibing takes me quite a long time, so I'm having to sail slowly to get to the mark. All the time frantically scanning the horizon behind me. I just don't want to see a mast. When I get to the corner, I should have a bit of speed to kind of increase the distance between us. But I know that the three of them are all just back there. Got my go faster main up. Okay, I can see a mast. I need to get to that corner. I think that's Roman. Bother.
Well, she kept her main together. Bravo Zulu. There's still a hole there, as Clark Chapin is observing, and all of you will have seen. You can see it right over her head right now at the end of that video. But bravo Zulu to her. She repaired it. She kept it in more or less one piece, in one piece, and has finished by now, according to Big Bravo. Martha Angel Peterson is saying, yep, that somebody told me, who was it, said that she'd finished. Yeah, Fog Machine has said that Pip has finished. So bravo Zulu to all of them. What a fantastic sport. Thanks again to Mark Husted and John Sangmeister and others who encouraged us to follow that race. And we're not going to do a show Friday, as I said, but I'll do a show a week from today, and we'll hopefully have some follow-up videos from that. Bravo Zulu, I'm going to go back to the top of the show. I didn't want to play it in the B block because of having Chris and Tim on from the CCA, but back to John Emmett now. A terrific video that he has done on the championship, the champions, from the ILCA 6 and 7 Europeans. Have a look. Again, this is in the air, just wrapped up yesterday.
I'm John Emmett. I'm at the ILCA 6 European Championships. It's just finished, and we've had a pretty speedy pack up in the rain. But more important, the person to my right is not only the European champion, but back-to-back European champion. So if you can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Agata Barwinska, and I'm from Poland.
And you had a superb year last year.
Yeah, I had a really good year. Yeah, I finished second at the Worlds, and I won the Europeans, so it was a pretty good year.
And were you expecting this, or you think maybe the competition level's gone up, or how's it looking coming into the second half of the Olympic cycle?
I would say, of course, I was coming here to defend my title, but I would say it was a really hard event, and each regatta are very difficult, and you can expect anyone to win, basically.
Absolutely, and I think it's just getting harder and harder from the coaches' perspective. They sometimes ask us who's performing well, and the list of names gets longer and longer. Only 6 months to the next Europeans. What happens between now and then?
Now, of course, a little bit of a break, well-deserved break because it was a very long season.
So what's a break for a European champion?
Well, end of December, beginning of January, we're planning to go to Vilamora, so back to training in beginning of Jan.
And how will you enjoy your time off then?
Home, definitely home with a bit of snow because I saw it's already started snowing there. So gonna enjoy a bit of colder weather.
You're going to enjoy the cold weather. It's funny, not many sailors said that to me this week, but
yeah, with water cold, that's not great. But with the snow, I love snow, so it's good to be. It's gonna be good to be home.
brilliant. Really well deserved break. Once again, many congratulations, and maybe see you in Vilamora.
Thank you very much, and see you there.
If you've enjoyed this video, please remember to like, share and subscribe.
John Emmett Sailing. His videos are getting better and better. Thanks, John, and congratulations to Agata Barvinska from Poland. Did you see John also managed to get a little Ukrainian flag in there at the end? He's very, I haven't talked to him today. I've texted with him, but he's very concerned about that war, and as we all are, but it's not over yet. We'll get to the America's Cup here in a moment. A couple of comments about the AC-40s. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Stingray is saying, how does John get around enjoying being around all these beautiful people? I'm jealous, he says. Oh, and by the way, we saw comments up above. Pip Hare finished a half an hour ago. Fog Machine is saying a minute and a half after Sebastian Marcet. Okay, and Mary Jude thinks she finished in 12. So regardless, bravo Zulu to her. Congratulations. Very well done. These, speaking of not so well done, the AC news out of New Zealand is not good. You probably saw these photos on my Facebook page, or some of them anyway. ETNZ's AC-40, a.k.a. the LEQ-12, which I guess you probably know. We mentioned it on the show before. Maybe you don't know. For those wondering what LEQ-12 means, Dan Bernasconi of ETNZ explains, quote, LEQ-12 means any yacht used for development or training that is less than or equal to 12 meters LOA. That's out of the class rule, the technical regulations. An LEQ-12. Come on, guys. Bloody hell. But this boat, as you will have seen, in fact, Bo Froelich, if you're watching, he saw this photo. This was on my cover photo of my Facebook page for a while, maybe still is. And he just saw that they'd flipped, didn't realize that the front end of the boat, the bow, had, when they did the big, apparently, well, we'll see it in the video, they did a big up and down, and these are not fine bows, they're broad bows for buoyancy forward and all that buoyancy. The bow is obviously not strong enough to take the load when they crash back down in the water with breeze and seaway. Nothing, as you'll hear Grant Dalton say in a minute, nothing more than what they expect in Bermuda. Here's a video.
Really tough day for us as a team, and we were sailing out, getting some waves and really pushing things to the upper end of the spectrum. But yeah, we had obviously a pretty good crash down the back of a wave.
A decent structural failure in the bow area. Not extreme conditions, quite big waves, but big stuff. Probably compressed the deck, which is buckled, and then as the boat's rounded up, it's taken side force, which has got compression into the starboard side. That's very speculative at the moment, but that's how it looks just when you physically look at the boat and knowing, how far under the boat went and the stuff. So the boat's got to be able to do that sort of thing, because even an automatic pilot, sometimes things can go wrong. So yeah, it is a structural failure which needs to be remedied and more strength put into that area.
One of the really pleasing things today was just about how we've managed to get the boat back here in reasonable time without any further damage. I think the whole team out on the water did an amazing job.
It couldn't have been better, actually. And as soon as we got into the smooth water, felt the boat was quite safe up onto the foils and home, and well, I think it was textbook recovery. And you'd expect that from the guys. Curly's running that, and everybody responded. The comm stayed on. In that respect, couldn't be better.
in that respect, it couldn't have been better. Well, in every other respect, this is a major. This is a fustercluck. I don't know how else to put it because, yeah, he was on. They were on the autopilot, as you just heard him say. Clayton Allen Embley is yes. They are going to have to go back and retrofit the boats that have already been built and delivered, notably Ineos. They're going to have to redo the boats that are still in build up there in China. As Gordon Smith is saying, the AC-40 damage is bad news for American Magic, ETNZ, and Alinghi. Good news for Luna and Ineos, who don't have those boats, or Ineos haven't splashed theirs. They did their own. They haven't splashed their one design boat, which is what these boats are. But they did their own boats as test boats, as we've been showing you. Now, Ineos, well, they've got their boat, but as you also know, the rig dropped on Luna Rossa. And so the Luna Rossa boat has been out of action. They've been towing it around up on the foils and trying to get some test data and so on. But what a fustercluck. I mean, forget about the logo and some of the whole decision of going to Barcelona. I've been trying to get enthused about this, but I'm sorry, ETNZ. It's, with this latest, okay, you can say it was good they got home. Well, it was, but this is a major, as you all know and you're all saying. Okay, no personal attack, Stingray, against Mr. Dalton. Designers should now be looking at Pelican Beaks. Baton Rouge is saying, Bowgate, John Mangino. Hi, John, welcome. Other than that, Mrs. Kennedy, how was Dallas? Yeah, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? American Magic is far out ahead of everyone, Stingray asserts. Still, new systems at full scale. Yeah, maybe. There was more after this accident. Look at that. That was obviously after the boat's been lifted out. You see, they ran a forestay wisely. These guys are good boaties. I mean, they ran a forestay down here so they could tow the thing in, take the load off this forestay, and ran something down there to the mid-bow and got it back in one piece. But this is a fustercluck of magnificent proportions. Alistair Murray. Hey, look at this. We got some hot tip. I spoke to Nathan Outer, who was on the boat, by the way, when it happened yesterday, and they have a small repair job. Jonathan Frank, just walking in the door. Hi, Jonathan. Did I miss anything? You have to go back and watch the show. We had terrific with Tim Murphy, who's still standing by up there in Gloucester watching the show. Otto's had to leave, but Tim, thanks again for what you did. Nice to see you, sir. Much appreciated. And so, yeah, go back and see the show with Tim and Otto on the CCA. Jonathan, you'll really appreciate that, as we appreciate that little picture of Jonathan Franks up there above Julia's chair, which we put the banjo into accompany. Well, I have some accompaniment now with the silent banjo next to Julia's. But look, there's more. Here's another video from Grant Dalton on the dock after assessing the whole situation when they got back in.
Obviously, we've had a decent structural failure in the bow area today. It wasn't extreme. I mean, the waves were quite big, but Barcelona will have decent-sized waves, probably 15 to 20 knots, no more. I mean, it's really early to say what actually happened, but in the start, I lost the rudder. They're in LEQ 12 mode at the moment. Manual control, lost the rudder, stuffed it pretty deep, but it happens, and then it rounded up, and it looks like, just in the initial discussion with the designers, that basically the deck is creased, and then the side load on the compression.
Why are you looking at me? We want to look at the video.
Starboard side allowed the bow to come around as well and crush that. So, who knows? But it could be just we need to put another ring frame in the front or in the bow area just to strengthen that whole area up. I think that the knock-on effect is this is obviously going to need a new bow. But there's Ineos's boat, which is delivered, so that's going to have a bit of a retro. Our boat is the next one. It's due here next week. And Alinghi's next off, the taxi off, and that's still in the yard, so we'll be able to just retrofit that then. So it's not ideal, but, it happens, and we'll deal with it.
So it's basically a new boat. We're doing new things with it. And finding those
you're right, but then this isn't how I fell off the deck. This is a decent structural failure. So I don't think we're doing anything with it extreme at all. although it was, we were pushing it.
It was a good crash.
Yeah, it was a good crash, and you guys were struggling to keep up with the chase boat, so it was pretty decent waves. But that's what we'll get, and a boat should be able to handle that stuff. It's just that's how it works, and cancel the regatta at Moreno Beach Boating Club, So as I say, the guys have got to analyse it properly. It's way too speculative, but it's obviously had a compression failure in the deck and a side load, which has turned the bow. It may be as simple as it needs another ring frame. It might need some longitudinals. But until we look at it properly, we can't be sure.
Well, when it all happened, we got on site. First thing I was really worried about was if you righted the boat, and then we had rig load on our damaged chain boat in the bow, the rig was going to come down and then the boat was going to sink. I was very impressed with your damage control. Nobody rushed. Took your time and basically checked, are we taking on water? Obviously, we had a bit of water in the boat, but not as much as I was expecting to see.
Well, there's a bulkhead, a crashed bulkhead, and everything was contained in front of that, so there was no water in the boat at all at any stage. Losing the forestay and then losing the rig was definitely something we had to consider, and therefore we just ran the man line down, put a hole through the deck and tied it below. So, and the boat's happy sitting on its side like that. So I was just saying to Curly on the way in, that was a very controlled environment. The guys that just know what they're doing, and we just got on with it. So at no time was the boat in any real. At first, you're not quite sure until you know that it's contained in front of the watertight bulkhead, but the boat was never in any danger at any time.
Oh, fantastic. Grant, thank you very much.
Okay, so there's your answer, John Mangino, that wonder if there's a crash bulkhead up there. There is indeed. And you saw that wonderful logo at the end now of these videos. You see it also in the lower right-hand corner where we normally have our downstream keyer. And it's that's that little logo. I can turn that on and off depending upon what we're watching. But that's it's a fustercluck. I don't know how else to say it, and we'll see how quickly they can recover, because it affects all the other teams, because they've required the other teams to buy these boats, and of course they're being used for the America's Cup youth and women's events, and we'll see how that all goes. Now, speaking of the logo, I put it up in Correct and Crutonic on Friday's show, and I don't know if there was anybody who thought the logo was cool or good. There may have been one or two of you, or there may have been some people on here who did not want to comment about it. But I've gone back and after seeing the Scuttlebutt ran a scathing negative reaction to it. So did a few other publications and a lot of people online. I'm not going to beat the dead horse. It's just a crappy logo. I don't know how else to put it. I've gone back and looked at our logo. Some of you suggested this was a good logo. I don't think it's all that great. This was our 2013 logo here in San Francisco that was designed before a few of us went back in, and the two guys that were originally running the Cup here that were hired by Russell, and frankly by me and a couple other guys, we all threw in and said, yeah. And I was over at the team, and they came up with this logo. And again, it's supposed to channel, supposed to look like, I guess, the bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge. You can see that little white thingy here that I guess is supposed to represent the bridge. I don't know. But, that doesn't communicate sailing. And these guys were non-sailors. And you know how I feel about non-sailors running sailing events. And Ted Ryman is saying, yeah, that logo is a joke, meaning the other one. But this one was not much better. And again, I say what we did in San Diego in '92. That, to me, is what an America's Cup logo ought to look like. Bruno Trublet does cool things, or did cool things with the Louis Vuitton Cup logos. And that communicates sailing, that communicates match racing. It gets the name of the event. And we also had on a lot of those, we had a splash line below that San Diego, California, or San Diego, whatever. So I don't know. It's just really a shame when a sailing event's logo doesn't even communicate sailing. That was from the second San Diego Defense, 92. And by the way, the logo from the 88 Defense, which I also ran, had a very similar logo. It was a little more stylized than that, and I simplified it for the 92 event. Alistair Murray saying, agree, like the one on the sweatshirt. Absolutely. And that I could go back to Royal Perth's Defense. They had a very cool logo that also communicated sailing. I will say this, that at least they have the cup, which other logos have not. The cup pour, when the front of the cup is towards you, the cup pours to the right when it's properly. And there are some people, like on here in the studio, you can see this big painting of the cup here in Studio B has the cup properly pouring to the right, because that bulbous part of the cup, right? I don't know if I can point to it, but you can see the bulbous part has the name on it. Okay, I digress. What else? I like how the 2A point toward the cup. Jonathan Frank says, are you talking about this logo? I don't know. You can remove the lettering and still know what it is. Exactly, John Mangino. That's exactly the point. That you could take America's Cup away and you would, at least a lot of people, maybe even some non-sailors would know that that was a sailing event and it was the America's Cup. Okay. Oh, he's Jonathan Frank's talking about the San Francisco logo. Yeah, okay. But it didn't communicate sailing, so it wasn't correct. Now, back to, still on the America's Cup, back to Luna Rosa and their problems. And I told you about them towing the boat around because they broke their rig. Have a look at what they've been up to in Sardinia at their base in Cagliari.
Thank you, Rossi, for talking to us. Obviously, it's great to see you back on the water. 2 weeks has passed. Can you tell us how big the damage was, and have you managed to fix everything?
Yeah, I mean, we need to take care of all the downtime that we have, and this issue that we had a couple of weeks ago was a good opportunity to do some changes that they were planned for a future. So we get this opportunity to do them at this stage. So it was in some way good for us to have all this done, and all the shore crew and offshore crew and the building team is doing a great job in putting the things back together in terms of the rig. And by next week, I say that we will be back in the water with a full sailing.
We saw a long tow session today. How come you guys choose for towing and not for actual sailing?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, I mean, we use this opportunity to do some changes and some adjustments from all the electronics and mechatronics that they are a big part of these boats. And in the towing, we can learn a lot of all these works that have been done. And I think what was very useful today, put everything together and be sure that we don't lose any further time in the future when we go back sailing. So I think it has been really, really productive. You know, the weather was a little bit windy, but for doing the test was pretty good, a good Mistral where we have flat water. So we're pretty happy with the day.
So a new sensor on the port wing. Can you tell us anything about it?
Well, as everybody, as all the other teams know, we try to censor as much as we can in terms of appendages, and this is also part of our testing schedule, you know, so censoring what we can and when we can.
So what's the plan for the next?
I mean, next, as I said before, I mean, the rig is nearly there, and next week or 10 days we will be back in the water, fully rigged and sailing, and everybody happy with a new setup. Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Ok, grazie a tutti e ci vediamo la prossima settimana. Arrivederci.
I guess you don't have to have a logo that looks to convey sailing when the sport has turned into boats on foils that are flying and being towed around by a powerboat. Corrector Crutonic. Stingray is observing that, like with Ineos, there are some fancy sensors on those Luna Rosa foils. There's fancy sensors on all these boats. Trust me, Stingray, especially near the bulb flap intersection. Towing with both foils down seems less productive. Fog Machine is saying, yeah, and it's a fustercluck, this whole thing. Now, I know Stingray thinks that Quantum Racing American Magic, QRAM, Quantum Racing American Magic, QRAM, is that what we're going to call them, are leading the pack right now because they've modified their the second boat of the first generation boats, and are hard at it, and with some success in Barcelona, in Pensacola. So bravo Zulu to them. But I suspect this team is making steady progress and are going to be the ones in the end of the day to be reckoned with. I keep saying that. I know a lot of you don't agree, but watch this, commemorating their GC32 win. We've told you that before, but you got to give them credit. The GC32 champs, Alinghi Red Bull Racing.
For this, and now it's my turn. Sweat on my face, blood in my eyes. Been underground, now I aim for the skies.
I tell you, you got to give them credit. They win. They got young sailors. They're, I'm sure, on a rapid, uphill learning curve, big learning curve. The more complex, the more can go wrong. Julie Aaron is saying, by the way, Julie, she said she could have designed a better logo. She didn't quite say in her sleep, but no doubt. She and everybody else. Jody Shields is saying a Chinese man, I don't know if it was a Chinese man, but once said there is a bad juju on this regatta. I thought that juju was an African expression, but I'm not sure. We can ask Clark Chapin. It might be a Michigan expression. Too bad juju. Oh, my goodness. Okay, that doesn't quite get us to the D block, but I have at the end here the answer to your question. Several of you asked the question, how in the hell, and I think Jody Shields knew this, that they didn't get their daggerfoil down, the new lured daggerfoil on Sir Ben's boat. And that is when they did this jibe too late and let Tommy Slingsby get through the gate first. They cut them off at the pass, as the Cowboys and Indians used to say. So the question was, how did AUS get by GBR at the final gate in Dubai? And here is your answer.
It's been an interesting weekend here in Dubai. Light wind yesterday. Well, the first race was all right. It was fairly solid foiling, sort of 70% of the time. We didn't have a great start. We just got a little bit close to the line. We got back to 5th, and then there was a little incident with the Swiss on the finish, and they got ahead of us there. So it was a 6, not like the best start. Race 2 was really good, much better start. We were 2nd at the first mark, and then managed to grind down the New Zealanders on the last run. In some really light testing conditions. We got the win, which was fantastic. Final race was a little bit of a repeat. The fleet separated very quickly because it was so light. The rich get richer, they get clear wind, and they're able to get away. And we were having a really good battle with the Americans, and the race was actually shortened, and so we took the win at the Windward Mark on that. So that was, it was a solid first day. Although we had a nice lead overnight, 5 points, with 3 races before the final on Sunday, anything can happen. So it's a little bit of a reset and, take one race at a time. We had a solid race, a little bit conservative, but good enough, and we got a 2nd in that race. Like the second race of the day was it was another solid race. And so after basically those first 5 races, our position in the final was assured. We de-risked a little bit because A, we don't want to break the boat, and B, we don't want damage points. So we didn't push too hard, but it was nice to do the race anyway and just keep on top of what was happening on the course. The final was, it's a pretty amazing race for a spectator. A little bit frustrating for us. We got round the first mark in 2nd. It's real tight at the top. We rounded really close with Australia. It was all to play for. The wind was going a little bit lighter, so there are a lot of options. The wind, shifting about 10 degrees, so there were some sort of passing lanes. And at the top, we got back into the lead again. Just as we were coming into the finish, when we were leading, we had to do quite a difficult manoeuvre, like a real tight double jibe. And it was one of those funny ones where you haven't quite got time to raise a board and get the board down, or whether you just keep 2 boards down and you basically jibe and jibe without clearing it. You couldn't get the new board down coming back to the finish, which meant we came off the foil. Yeah, it's frustrating, and you know, you can imagine guys and girls are pretty annoyed with the finish, especially after doing so well in qualifying. But I think you've got to take solace in the squad was sailing well, and you know, bring on the next event in Singapore.
Well, there it is, and I think we had figured that out. At least Jody had, and maybe others of you, when we looked at the video on Friday. Julie Aarons, at that level, conservative choices can cost you, and Slingsby knows how to take advantage of any slips. Yep, Slingsby's still the best going, but so is Sir Ben. I mean, that was an unfortunate error. They should have not done a double jibe so quickly. You got to position it's all, it's course management, as the guys call it. You got to position yourself properly so that you don't have to do a double jibe there at the end and risk not being able to get your boards up and down, right? So that's so much for Sir Ben's team. I thank Rob Wilson for that explanation, their esteemed coach. There are the standings, as we showed you, I think, on Friday. Tom Slingsby and co leading. Pretty comfortable lead. There's 4 events left, so there's anything can happen. Pete Burling is having a much better season. Quentin Delapierre also having a great season. Sir Ben slipping a bit. And Nikolai Sehested, Denmark, is in there, hanging in there. Phil Robertson, no surprise, bringing Canada up the leaderboard. Big surprise, Jimmy Spithill not doing so well. And Spain and Switzerland were not too surprised about those new teams. There are 4 events left. The final 4, Singapore, next stop in mid-January, then to Sydney, then to Christchurch. Then here in San Francisco, the final is the 6th through the 7th of May next year, 2023, to complete SailGP's Season 3. And we'll be following that, of course, as we always do. Gordon Smith is saying yes, Denmark is doing just fine. I completely agree. And now for Corrector Crutonic. Back to SailGP for a minute, because maybe yesterday, in fact, SailGP published this astonishing graphic. At least I found it astonishing. I hope it's true. SailGP claiming to have 1.63 million live viewers on CBS over the weekend. Cumulative views for the SailGP in Dubai, 1.63 million live viewers on CBS. I'm going to go take a look at that. Any of you who have access to the various TV ratings here in the U.S., please pass that along. I hope it's true. I mean, if SailGP published it, I'm assuming it's true. I take their word for it. But is it views? Is it access? Is it, there's one thing to have eyeballs and people that actually view it. It's another thing to have what's called reach, meaning there are television sets that were on or were capable. Well, they won't know if there are people watching it or not. I don't know. We'll have a look. Is M million or 1,000? No, Steve Gruber, it was 1 million. It wasn't 1 point. They wouldn't promote 1.63 thousand. M, of course, in the classical sense, is 1,000, but these days they use K for 1,000, M for 1 million, at least in television. And they were, look at in the graphic itself. What does the graphic say? Yeah, see, it says down there on the bottom, 1.63 million viewers on CBS. So it's quite clearly meaning million, or at least SailGP does. So we'll have a look at that. I don't know if that's correct or crutonic. Maybe some of you know. I don't know. But yeah, Julia's not with us. We think she's going to get sprung, whether or not Blake Middleton comes out and does it himself. It would be great. No, I think she's, I was with her yesterday when I went over to the place of the convalescent home, and the doctor is saying, yep, it's time to get her out. And that's also time to get us to the D block with our favorite person on here for whiskey, Tango Foxtrot, and some great submissions. And since we're not doing a show on Friday, I thought we'd do a few more than usual here. This first one, thanks to James Bland, J. Frederick Bland, who I don't think is on today. He had a conflict. But Dr. Loring, there's more to life than math. the lady is saying up there, and then she's undoing her robe and opens up to her comely body, and the guy looks at her, and all he sees is equations. I thought that was pretty good. I don't know why I thought that was so funny, but it was. Thanks, J. Frederick Bland. James Bland down in Texas. The next one is Julia. If you're watching, get your finger ready. Well, at the track, I get cheered for finishing first. It's Thanksgiving week. We have to have a couple laughs. That's from Greg Phillips down in Oz. Thank you, Greg. And Julia, you can do another finger wag. Even I would do a finger wag at myself. You know, if I could wag a finger at myself, I would for running this one, but I couldn't help it. I won't mention who sent this to us, but the punchline is, this is why you don't, I'm going to mention who sent it to us. This is why you don't put Christmas lights on palm trees. I think that's from the Middle East. I'm not quite sure where that's from. I'm sorry. But, you know, that's from Ryman. That's from Ted Ryman. Thank you, Ted. That was the palm tree picture. We're getting toward Christmas. I thought that kicks off the Christmas season since we're in our Thanksgiving holiday week here. And then this was funny. This is a little political cartoon. This is dedicated to Julia. She'll like this one. Girlfriend said, please don't talk politics with my liberal parents at Thanksgiving. Just bring some wine. And the guy says, yeah, sure thing, babe. And he brings that crappy Trump wine and champagne. Now, Julie Ahrens, I'm dedicating this next one to you. Big game this weekend, this Saturday. Number 2, Ohio State is playing number 3, Michigan. There is no truth to the rumor that Ohio State is planning to do a retractable stadium roof on their big horseshoe stadium down there in Columbus, Ohio. My alma mater, Michigan, is playing Ohio State. Michigan ranked 3, Ohio State ranked 2. It's not the first time that these two teams have been ranked in the top 3 or 4 and gone head to head. I think Ohio State's the better team. I mean, forgive me, those of you in Ann Arbor. My mother's having a heart attack for me to say that, but it should be hopefully it's a great game. I shall look forward to it. And Julie Ahrens, who lives in Ohio, I thought you would really like this. We dedicate this graphic to you. That's one hell of a stadium, Stingray is saying. Don't miss the game this Saturday. Julie Ahrens is saying we won't. And I'm sure Julie will think that's funny. Get your finger ready for this one. This is kind of clean. I think this is pretty good. And several of you sent this, notably Ed Worley sent this. I sail because for golf, soccer, and tennis, you only need one ball. One ball. Thanks, Ed Worley, and several others of you sent this. It's making the rounds on the internet today. Yeah, Clark Chapin saying, blasphemy that I would say that maybe Ohio State's the better team. But what a great image that is. What a great sport we have, and that gets us to the finish line. We just want to thank all of you again, and I urge you please to like, follow, and share. Hit the bell. You'll get a reminder, at least on YouTube, when we go live. Comments are welcome, too, even in replay, because many of you do watch it, as we say at the end of each show, in replay. Please, this show is brought to you not by sponsors, or every now and then we have a sponsor, but support us on Patreon, patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated. Give us a few bucks a month, and that helps keep us on the air. And at this point, I'd go usually to Julia and say, Julia, any final thoughts? Any other comments? But she's not here, sadly. We do think the good news is, though, we think she's going to get out of there in a few days and be back here to her Commodore suite upstairs here at the Beach Street Yacht Club. She owns the building, lets me have a nice apartment here where we have our Studio B. We're in Studio B these days. And we'll be following the World Cup. The U.S. Went to a tie with Wales yesterday, 1-1. That was the U.S. seemed to dominate the first half and then seemed to fall apart in the second half. Young team that they are. Wales played very well in the second half. Lots of comments about that. Like, follow, and share. Thanks, Julie Aaron. Please come home, Julia. Jonathan Frank is saying, thanks to everybody. Great show again, Ted Ryman. Ryman is saying England beat Iran in the first World Cup game. Lots and lots of great show. Thanks, Tom. Have a great, thank you, Alistair. Thanks for the birthday. wishes. We appreciate that very much indeed. And as I said, we are going to take the rest of the week off. I don't want to work on Thursday. It takes a half a day Thursday to put the Friday show together. I want to celebrate Thanksgiving with some of our friends here in San Francisco and be on the phone to my mom and a few others around the country, around the world. Wherever in the world you are, if you're celebrating Thanksgiving here in the U.S. or elsewise, happy Thanksgiving week. No show this Friday, the 25th of November. We'll be back next Tuesday at the usual time, 1300 Pacific, year-round. In the meantime, have a great rest of your week and the weekend. See you next Tuesday. And if you can, go sailing and sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. Ciao for now. Typing a comment there.